Hi, my name is Lorraine Watry and welcome to my studio. I am a watercolor artist and I've worked with watercolor for 26 years now, and I thought I would start a new series of videos where I go over different tips, tricks, and techniques for working with watercolor. And hopefully these short videos will help you in your journey, and if you have a question or a technique that you would like to see, please comment below and I will try to accommodate that in a future video.
Hi, in today's video I am going to go through a sped up version of a Swan color study that I did for a class on painting a swan that I taught recently. And so the color study is just to get an idea of my colors, but I thought I would use this video as an example to talk about painting something that is white in watercolor. And the first colors that I'm getting out are the colors that I wanted to try in order to paint the background water for the swan. And I did not use any masking fluid on this painting because it is a color study. I didn't want to take a lot of time masking things off, so you will see me probably go over the edges of the swan here and there. And I painted water on the background for the first part of this in order to do a wet and wet background. And then the first color that I applied was a gray mix, and I used ultramarine blue with a touch of burnt sienna in it, and I wanted the gray to be a warmer gray, so I used a little more burnt sienna and made it warmer. Then the gray, or the darker blue gray that I ended up using in the water, was a mix of ultramarine blue, the burnt sienna, and a touch of phthalo blue in it. And I really liked that combination for this particular image. And so you can see here where I'm going back and lifting a little bit of some of those edges just to clean it up a little. And a lot of the time when I do a color study, I'm not necessarily trying to make it perfect, but I figured if this little painting came out decent, then I could frame it or give it to someone, or just keep it or sell it if I wanted to. So I'm going back and mixing up more of the color, and the foreground water I painted around white areas that will then get some color later. So because of how we are going to be doing this class, or did this class, because this video will come out after the class is over, I will have had the students and myself mask those lighter shapes in the foreground and mask the swan, so that when we go to paint the water on, we won't have to paint around a lot of little shapes. We're going to be doing the painting as a 10 by 10 image, and so we need to be able to just focus on the water. So for my color study then, I am going back and painting around those lighter shapes. Now, one of the things that you may notice is that the color has changed a little bit from the background water to the foreground water, and that was because I did not mix up a big enough area, and when I went to do the foreground water, my mix wasn't exactly the same. And as I'm working on the painting, I do adjust that later. And then for some of those harder edged areas, especially toward the back, or the middle, I guess, of the water, I want to soften a few of their edges so that they don't stand out as much, and there's a little bit of a kind of a transition between the harder edged foreground shapes and that soft edged background. So I was just using a brush to lift a little bit in there. And then I'm coming back, and all of the blue-gray area is dry, and I'm going back into those lighter shapes that are in the foreground that have the harder edges, and I am painting that gray mix of the ultramarine blue and burnt sienna into those shapes in the foreground water. The reflection under the swan, I left that without any color at this point, and I will be starting on the swan once I get the water going a little more. And I don't always do a color study for all of the paintings I'm doing anymore, but if you're doing a painting and you're not quite sure what colors you want to use, or maybe what your process is going to be, doing a small color study, and it could be even smaller than this, it could be even less detailed, can really give you an idea of the colors that you're using and maybe your process of how you want to paint it. This painting, I believe, was about 6 by 6, and the actual painting will be 10 by 10. But doing something in a smaller size like this doesn't take as long. I think this was probably a couple hours to go through the whole process for this one, and then I've sped it up so that it's about 15 minutes. I am now going to get out colors to start working on the swan itself, and I have pulled out quinacridone rose. I am using new gamboge, and I also got out quin gold just to give myself some options, and I also pulled out Hansa light. And then the first area on the neck and the head, I actually decided I needed to clean up the edges just a little more. And so I'm using that flat brush with some water to clean up those edges. And then I'm painting clear water on the neck and head, and I will be using the Hansa light at the top. And so this is where, when you're going to paint something that is white, you can actually put quite a bit of color on that white subject. So it really helps if you have good light, though, when you take your image or wherever you're, whatever you're working on, whether it's in person or a still life or a photo, that you have good light on the subject. It can look very just blown out and flat white if you don't have some good light on it. So the swan has some bounce back color that is happening in the shadows. And when you're looking in the shadows on a white subject, really look for some color changes. The first colors that I used on there, I believe I used the quin rose and new gamboge to make a warm orange. And I think I used the quin rose and quin gold to make a warm orange. And I used the Hansa light along the very top edge and on the edge that's down by the lower part of the neck. And just to give a little bit of a bright glow at that edge. I do not want to get rid of all of the white, though. And then in the shadow part that I just painted on, I used some cobalt blue and the quin rose to make, and I think a touch of the quin gold in there to make a muted purple. And that muted purple is at the top of the bird's head and on the neck. And we may even do it darker in the class itself. For the color study, it was more just about getting my colors figured out. And so it's actually amazing how much color you can put in the shadows or on whites and have them still look white. So sorry about my palette in this particular part of the video. I hadn't checked to see what my video camera was doing on that section, and so you're not going to be able to see my colors. But I used the quin rose and the new gamboge for the beak of the bird. And now I'm going back with some of that purple mix, the cobalt and quin rose, with a touch of the quin gold in it to add to the shadows on the neck of the bird. And so if this feels too strong right now, partly because I do go back into the water later and I do darken that background water a little more. So when you're trying to make something look white, it is also about the values around that object and whether or not those values are strong enough to make the white object feel like it's white, even if it has color on it. So I'm working on the swan, and I am going to the feathers now, and I'm using a variation of those same colors on the shadow parts of the feathers. And there's some warm areas, and that might be the quin rose and quin gold mixed together. I believe I have some purple in there in various places, so that would be probably the cobalt and the quin rose. And I may add a touch of yellow to it every now and then, or I may leave it a little bit of a brighter purple. And I am leaving the very highlighted areas where it is strongly lit, and I'm leaving those white and letting the glow of the paper create that white look on the bird. And so I'm still looking at those shapes, and they are very abstract looking shapes. So it's about creating the shadows and the marks that are medium to dark value around the lighter values in order to make those lighter values come forward. So basically I am negatively painting right now. And when I do my drawings, I will mark all of those things on the drawings. So I have marks in there that show me where I want to be putting my shadows, and basically where I'm painting right now, that's where my lines are. And these are all kind of mid-value, light to mid-value shapes that I'm putting in. And then in the back part of the bird's tail area, there is a warmer, pretty vibrant area in that section right there, and then a darker value up under the tail. And I think I adjusted my colors in there so they're a little more neutral on the back of his tail. And once some of that is dry, and I'm coming in with a little bit of a darker value here and there now, because that will help make some of those lighter areas pop a little more. And he will need some darker shadow underneath that tail area once it's dry. And I'm pulling out some ultramarine blue and the phthalo and some of my alizarin crimson, and the phthalo I will be using for the eye. And I don't know why I pulled out the ultramarine blue. I think I was going to do something else, and then I decided to go ahead and do the dark black area on the beak and head. And so that's the phthalo blue and permanent alizarin crimson. And then I'm just kind of filling in some of those areas. There is a few lighter areas in those areas as in that part of the mark on the head, and the beak needed to go a little darker as well. So just getting in that darker value, that black up around the bird's head, that alone starts to make some of those whites pops. That value change can really help give the viewer a sense of dark and light. And I could then see, I also, which I knew, I needed to go back and adjust some of the values on the bird. And again, this is probably not as dark as it may end up being in the actual painting, but it was giving me a good idea of the colors. And now I'm going into the water and using water on the page first, and then I'm going back and using a variety of those same colors that I used on the swan down in the water. And there were some kind of muted golds and some pinks and a variety that way. And then there was a more neutral mix toward the back of the bird. And this area back here under the bird is actually very dark. It's one of the darkest parts of the water, and so I will be going back into that a couple times. And then this is a second layer on top of that, and some of this might have been done wet on wet so that I get some soft edges, but I may also be drawing in between some of these sections, and I don't know that I included all of my blow drying in the video itself. I think I stopped and dried. And then that little shape up there would be the reflection of some of the darks that are on the bird's head and beak. And now you can see I did go back and darken the water behind the bird's head. And now I'm cleaning up some of the edges around the head of the bird and just making some of those final marks. I hope this was interesting to see kind of the process of working with white in a painting. And If you are creating anything that's white, just really look at the shadows and the colors that you can see that are on the white object. And if you have a tip, trick, or technique video that you would like to see, please leave a comment below and I will try to get that into a future video. Thanks and have a good day. Bye.